Please be advised, this episode does have content that some may find distressing. As always, listener discretion is advised and it is not suitable for anyone under the age of 13.
Hello and welcome to It's Murder Up North and the second instalment of the Diane Sindall Peter Sullivan arc. In the previous episode, I focused on the life of 21-year-old Diane, a soon-to-be bride who was viciously murdered in an alleyway just off a busy road in Birkenhead. After an extensive police investigation, an arrest was made, and in 1987, 30-year-old Peter Sullivan would appear before Liverpool Crown Court charged with her murder. Join me as I delve into the prosecution's case against Peter Sullivan. Peter Andrew Sullivan, a slightly built individual with thin lips, dark eyes and thick black hair, entered the dock wearing a brown suit, brown tie and pale blue shirt. Like many perpetrators I have covered on this podcast, he seemed meek and unassuming. Yet during the trial, which began on Monday the 21st of September 1987, those gathered would hear details of the heinous crime he was alleged to have committed. However, the first day was taken up by legal wrangling, meaning the prosecution would begin their case against Sullivan on the 22nd of September. Prosecutor Mr. Andrew Rankin, QC, began by describing to the court details regarding the life of Diane Sindall, disclosing that she was an attractive young lady with a shy yet pleasant disposition. He explained how the 21-year-old was still residing with her parents at the time of her death, but had been engaged to David Beattie, with the pair who had been dating since they were 16, saving not only for their wedding, but their future together. Mr. Rankin then turned to the night that future was ripped away, when a cruel twist of fate left Diane stranded when her car spluttered to a halt as she made her way to David's flat after finishing work at 11:45 on Friday the 1st of August 1986. With the fuel tank empty, Diane was forced to leave the vehicle and she set off walking along Borough Road, a well-used thoroughfare. Although her destination was unknown, as she would never reach it. Mr. Rankin told the jury of 9 men and 3 women what occurred next. Quote, "She was the victim of a brutal and callous sexual assault. No one witnessed the assault, or her actual killing and death, but someone murdered her, and the Crown alleges that it was Sullivan." Mr. Rankin went on to describe the horrific injuries that had been inflicted upon Diane, with what they believed was a crowbar. The brutality of the blows to her head and body caused severe injuries, including numerous fractures. Diane's assailant had pulled her t-shirt and bra up above her neck, but the remainder of her clothing, along with her handbag, had been taken from the scene. However, the perpetrator had left some clues behind, including brown viscose and polyester threads, which were linked to a pair of trousers, 2 pairs of socks, and a settee located at the home of Peter Sullivan. Mr. Rankin would proceed by advising the jury that they would hear further evidence connecting Sullivan to the murder, stating that 2 oral pathologists were to testify. They had examined bite marks found on Diane's right breast and had identified them as being caused by the accused. The prosecutor went on to state that forensic odontologist Dr. Donald Gordon MacDonald had provided evidence in 17 previous court cases, going on to state that the expert had found, quote, "The defendant caused those bite marks. He murdered Diane Sindall beyond argument." Emphasizing the relevance of this, Mr. Rankin added, "That is how important the evidence of bite marks is. This is the critical part of the case, so critical that, in my submission, you can forget the rest of the case. The prosecution went on to state, there is a correspondence of the distinctive features of the teeth, size, shape and alignment with the features observed in the bites, adding, Dr. MacDonald has no hesitation at all in declaring the marks on the deceased's right breast as marks caused by the defendant's mouth. He has absolutely no doubt. Mr. Rankin would point out to the jury the unique nature of a person's teeth, telling them that no two mouths are alike, before going on to discuss the other witnesses who were to testify, many of whom had seen Diane's final walk along Borough Road. This included a couple who were sat on a bench when a woman matching Diane's description passed them. They noted as she walked, the woman kept glancing over her shoulder as if she was checking to see if a bus was coming. They also stated at the time the woman wasn't carrying anything other than her handbag. This detail was important, as another witness, a police officer who spotted Diane's vehicle parked in a prohibited location at 11:45, had returned to the area half an hour later and carried out a cursory check of the vehicle. Through the window he noticed several items, yet a white fuel can, which was usually inside, was missing. The prosecution would suggest that Diane had returned to the van to collect this, after being seen by the couple on the bench, as it was found in the alleyway not far from where her body was discovered. It is believed that another couple who were driving along Borough Road were the last to see Diane prior to the attack. They had come forward to state they had seen a lone woman who fit the description of the 21-year-old. Mr. Rankin told the court that is the last time, so far as we know, that Diane was seen alive by anyone other than the defendant. The next time she was seen by any member of the public was when she was found dead, about 12 hours later. The prosecution then focused their attention on the man they argued was responsible for Diane's death, stating that 3 weeks after her murder, Peter Sullivan had been interviewed by the police, during which he claimed that he had been at home watching television on the night the crime occurred. However, it would be another month before he would be charged with the offence, all because of a tip-off from an individual who, having seen a reconstruction on BBC's Crime Watch, believed they had seen Sullivan at Bidston Hill on the weekend of the murder. This placed him close to the location where Diane's burned clothing was found. Therefore, on the 23rd of September 1986, Peter Sullivan was brought back to the police station to be interviewed once more. Mr. Rankin told the court that during a series of interviews, the accused provided the police with varied accounts regarding his whereabouts on the night of the 1st of August 1986, and these differed from his initial claim that he was at home watching television. The prosecution went on to state that it had been discovered that Sullivan participated in a darts match at the Crown Pub, a significant event as it was the first time he played as an official member of the pub's team, prompting Mr. Rankin to ask, how could the defendant forget that significant occasion, the first time he played the Crown, adding, he told 3 differing stories, extraordinary. It was noted that the Crown Pub was within a 10-minute walk of the crime scene, placing Sullivan in close proximity. They would also argue that at some point he likely returned home to retrieve the murder weapon, which was said to have been a crowbar had borrowed from his neighbour in the days leading up to the murder. The lethal implement was shown to the courtroom, measuring a foot in length and having a hook at one end and a claw at the other. It made for a brutal weapon. With regards to connecting Peter Sullivan to the scene, the prosecution would call upon the expertise of Home Office forensic scientist Mr. Graham Jackson, who reported that fibres recovered from Sullivan's furniture and clothing matched tapings recovered from Diane's body. However, Mr. Jackson cautioned that although these fibres were determined to be an exact match through microscopic examination, only 3 strands were recovered, which reduced the significance of this evidence. A fellow forensic scientist, Philip Jones, would take to the stand to detail the manner in which Sullivan was alleged to have attempted to cover his tracks. It was stated that the charred remains of Diane's clothing had been set alight on the weekend immediately after the murder, yet they were not reported until 2 weeks later on August the 17th, 1986. A 4 sheepskin coat found with the clothing but deemed not to be connected to the murder was examined, leading to the discovery of paraffin soaked into the fabric, which Mr. Jones stated had likely been used to accelerate the burning process. More prosecution witnesses would take to the stand, with these individuals' testimonies focusing on what they saw on the night of the 1st of August, 1986. 18-year-old Stephen Krug told the court that he and his girlfriend had been on a night out, and while sitting at the bus stop they observed a woman walk past, with him going on to recall, "I was shown a photograph of the girl later by police, and I am sure it was her I saw that night. She had been walking at a steady pace and appeared to be looking back to see if a bus was coming. She was changing her bag from shoulder to shoulder, and passed within about 15 feet of us." Following him into the witness box was self-employed builder Clifford Fox, who had been working late at the auto repair centre alongside a colleague. While there, he noted a blue van pull up outside, and the female occupant seemed to momentarily lean forward over the steering wheel. Shortly afterwards, he was drawn to the sound of the van door slamming shut. He glanced up and saw the woman walking away from the vehicle in the direction of Birkenhead. Within moments of Diane leaving her van, a police officer passed by in his patrol car and noted the vehicle parked just off the roundabout close to the Central Station and Argyle Street at around 11:45 p.m. PC James Riley Cooper informed the court that he passed the vehicle on 2 more occasions, once at midnight and the 3rd time at 12:15. On this final occasion he pulled up and carried out a check of the van. He discovered that all the doors were locked except the one at the rear, and he took note of the multiple items within, adding that he did not see a white petrol can. Having discerned that the vehicle did not belong to the men working in the auto shop, the officer assumed that it had possibly broken down, with it remaining parked in the same location until his shift finished at 7 a.m. On the 29th of September 1987, the newspapers reported on the testimony of the key expert witness in the case, Dr. MacDonald, whose evidence prosecutor Andrew Rankin had firmly stated proved that Sullivan was the perpetrator. The forensic odontologist from Glasgow University described to the court how he had taken impressions of the defendant's teeth to compare against the marks found on Diane's body, which he admitted he hadn't seen in person, but the photos provided were sufficient for his analysis, going on to state that he had no doubts that Sullivan was responsible, adding, quote, "My conclusion is that there are sufficient points of similarity in alignment, size and shape of the teeth." When questioned regarding his expertise in the field, particularly in regards to participating in criminal trials, Dr. MacDonald replied that he had been called as an expert witness in 30 cases previously, during which he had examined approximately 50 bite marks, the majority of which were made into human flesh. Having clarified his credentials, Dr. MacDonald would present his findings, with the courtroom falling into silence as a slideshow of the bite marks were projected for all to see. Accompanying each slide, the doctor provided his analysis, while using a red spotlight pen to draw the jury's attention to particular details, including the absence of 4 teeth and a distinctive gap of 2 millimeters between Sullivan's 2 front teeth. He then overlaid the impressions of Sullivan's teeth onto several images of the bite marks, demonstrating each time the alignment between the two. It was also made clear to the court that during the course of the investigation, Dr. MacDonald had examined the teeth of 6 potential suspects, and Sullivan was the only one whose impressions tallied with the bites on the body. It was a compelling presentation, and without having their own expert to refute Dr. MacDonald's evidence, the defence opted to try and undermine the nature of his field of expertise. Defence counsel John Kay stepped up to cross-examine the forensic odontologist and queried how established the area was, asking, "Would you agree that this particular science is a developing science?" To which Dr. MacDonald replied, "I would say it is a well-developed science, practised admittedly in a small number of cases over a substantial period of time." Probing further, Mr. Kay asked, "It is a science of interpretation rather than measurement or anything of that kind," which garnered agreement from the doctor. As the cross-examination continued, Mr. Kay suggested that Dr. MacDonald would have been at a disadvantage because he had not actually seen the body, calling into question the accuracy of his analysis. But the expert defended this by stating it was not an impediment, as he had been provided with images of excellent quality. Continuing on with the topic of the images, the defence counsel went on to focus on the manner in which the doctor had presented the evidence to the court, asking, "Do you agree that the presentation made to the jury has the effect of exaggerating the similarities and cancelling out, maybe, differences?" The doctor replied, "I have concentrated on showing the similarities. I have not highlighted differences because I did not find any differences of significance." After this set of questions, Mr. Kay then referred back to the relatively new nature of forensic odontology in criminal investigations, suggesting to the witness, "You have fallen into a trap. This is a developing science, and you are claiming to have a greater degree of ability to point to a particular man than in fact is possible in your field." Dr. MacDonald would once again refute the notion that it was a new area of forensics, but conceded, "A grave danger in this line of work is getting a theory and making it stick," prompting the defence to reiterate his belief that the witness had fallen into a trap, but the doctor denied this and ended his time in the stand, stating, "I have presented my conclusions in the most conservative manner. I feel I can have no doubt in expressing them." As the self-assured doctor left the witness box, he was replaced by Senior Lecturer of Dentistry at Liverpool University, Dr. John Scott. Unlike his predecessor on the stand, Dr. Scott had initially expressed doubts regarding the bite marks having been caused by the defendant, and admitted he had not been made aware there were actually 2 impressions left on the body. Dr. Scott also advised the court that he had limited experience in examining bite marks, having only dealt with around 6 cases, and none of them were what he would class as aggressive in nature. Due to his misgivings and inexperience, Dr. Scott claimed he had advised the police to seek out a second opinion if they were unhappy with his conclusions. However, after conferring with Dr. MacDonald on the case, Dr. Scott stated that he had changed his opinion, and now believed the bites were caused by Sullivan, whose mouth he claimed was unusual, accompanying this by telling the court, "Irrespective of any position I might have had earlier, my present conclusion is that the bite marks on Diane Sindall were caused by Peter Sullivan's dentition. Although appearing for the prosecution, it was the defence counsel, Mr. John Kay, who would highlight the significance of Dr. Scott's change of heart, stating during cross-examination, "I can assure the jury it is not easy for any professional person to stand up and say he was wrong." With two experts in agreement regarding the bite marks, the prosecution would then call Dr. Geoffrey Garrett to testify regarding the injuries sustained by Diane. The consultant pathologist, who would tell the court he believed the bite marks occurred at or around the time of death, would also provide evidence regarding the post-mortem. Dr. Garrett began by referring to the supposition that a heavy object had been used to administer several blows to the victim, causing multiple fractures to the jaw and skull, with these combined with cerebral hemorrhaging being determined as Diane's cause of death, adding, "My conclusion is that the deceased lived for a short time after the head injuries were inflicted." Aside from the wounds to her head and face, the pathologist also described how it appeared that Diane had also been struck across the knees, and there was also signs she had attempted to defend herself, as evident by bruises on her arm. When considering the multitude and severity of her injuries, the pathologist told the court, "Other than road traffic accidents, I would say I have never seen anything as severe as this." As stated in the prosecution's opening address, it would be 3 weeks after Diane had been subjected to such a horrific attack that the police first spoke to Sullivan. He was seen by Detective Constables Ian Clark and Alan Yates at Morpeth Docks in Birkenhead on the 18th of August. The two officers had seen the man with a suitcase at his side casting pebbles into the water when they approached him to discern why he was there. During the conversation, Sullivan claimed he was trying to find work, as his wife was pregnant, but having struck out in Birkenhead, he planned to head to London to secure employment. He appeared open and cooperative, agreeing to show the police the contents of his suitcase, and willingly accompanied the officers back to the police station to answer questions regarding where he was on the night of the murder. Once there, he told them the first of many differing accounts. Sullivan told the interviewer that he had been to see his mother that day, and had arrived back at his home at Queensberry Gardens at around 6 o'clock. Sullivan recalled that he did go for a quick trip to a shop, but other than that, he was at home with his twin stepsons and their mother, watching television until he went to bed just before midnight. With regards to where the murder took place, Sullivan was said to have claimed that the only reason he would be on Borough Road was if his wife wanted to go shopping. Having voluntarily given his statement to the police, Sullivan was free to go, but a month later he was back in the interview room. These exchanges were recounted to the court, as 30-year-old Sullivan sat passively in the Liverpool courtroom. The transcripts of his interviews with D.I. Michael Semple and D.I. Howarth were read aloud. Sullivan was advised by the officers Diane Sindall was killed on Friday night or in the early hours of Saturday morning, before going on to ask whether he was responsible. To which Sullivan was alleged to have replied, "No, I don't go around killing people. I had never seen the girl in my life till one of the CID showed me a picture." As before, he stated that he rarely went to the Borough Road area, claiming that a former girlfriend whom he had split from 6 years earlier resided around there, and he feared returning due to threats her father had made towards him. As the interview progressed, Sullivan was noted as saying, "You have got stupid people out there going around stabbing people. Why pick on me? I have never murdered anyone in my life. Why would I want to kill a nice young girl? You can take me to court, but it won't stick. I will appeal right down to the highest court. I will sue you lot." When pressed by the detectives who suggested that he had seen Diane walking alone and she had rejected his advances, Sullivan denied this was the case. He did, however, concede that when he was first asked, he had lied about being on Bidston Hill on the Sunday after the murder. But, having placed himself in the area where the burnt clothes were found, he then changed back to his original claim that he wasn't there. As the evidence proceeded, details of Sullivan's interviews, held on the 23rd of September 1986, were heard, with the court being advised that the defendant was informed that his statements regarding his whereabouts on the night of the murder could not be corroborated, prompting Sullivan to start crying. The detective inspector conducting the interview advised Sullivan to regain his composure and asked him if he had anything he wanted to disclose. Still tearful, Sullivan replied, "No, I have done nothing wrong. I don't go around killing people. I never went near her. I don't know who she is, where she lives, and where she comes from. I never touched her." Adding, as he continued to sob, "All I want to do is go home. I want my mum, and I want Mary. Can't you let me go home? I can't take no more." Despite his distress and pleas, the interviews continued, with the court hearing that Sullivan persisted in his claim that he hadn't killed Diane after she had rejected him. But he did go on to confess, "I have even told you lies from the start. I don't know why. My mind goes funny one day, then it's good the next day." Due to a jury member falling ill, the trial would be delayed for a number of days. However, by Monday the 12th of October 1987, the newspapers reported on one of the key pieces of evidence against Sullivan, a recorded confession, captured during an interview conducted at midday on the 24th of September 1986. On the tape, the defendant was heard saying, "I don't know why I hit her," proceeding by him divulging what occurred that August night. Sullivan was heard sobbing as he admitted to Detective Sergeant Keith Kiffin that he killed Diane, going on to state he had seen her walking on Borough Road, recounting that as he passed her, he asked the 21-year-old for the time. After acquiring the answer, he waited till she turned around and struck her with a brick, which he promptly discarded, adding there was no one around when the attack occurred. When asked why he killed her, Sullivan stated, "I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd been drinking in the Park Hotel." Continuing their questioning, the officers requested that Sullivan provide them a more detailed account. However, this confession was not caught on tape, with it being alleged that the 30-year-old stated, "I went down through the precinct and thought to myself, right, I'll go over to Borough Road and see if I can meet someone and see what time it is. I saw this girl walking down Borough Road just past Central Station, going towards Tranmere. I said to her, 'Excuse me, love, you haven't got the right time for me, have you?' She said, 'Yes, it's getting on just 12 o'clock. Then I ran up, got hold of her arm, and started pulling her up the road. She was hysterical and was trying to scream. She was saying, 'Let me go, but I said, 'No, you are coming with me.' I gave her a slap across the face to shut her up." He alleged that he struck Diane on the head a couple of times with the brick, which he had grabbed while he held onto her. Recalling that after the initial strike, the 21-year-old fell to the ground, and he could hear her moaning. He then hit her again, after which Diane fell silent. Throughout his confession, Sullivan cried and repeatedly said, I'm sorry, and excused his actions by alleging he had been, quote, drunk out of his mind. He would continue to use this excuse, at one point telling the inspector that he didn't know why he had attacked Diane, stating only that he was, quote, drunk, I had been drinking whiskey and bitter. Sullivan went on to admit that the brown trousers he'd been wearing that night had been disposed of in the Morpeth docks. By placing them and some stones in a carrier bag, he had attached a brick to it, before casting the parcel into the water at the location where the two officers had seen him with a suitcase just 3 weeks after the murder. This encounter was brought up during his police interviews, and Sullivan explained he had gone to the docks on the 18th of August, hoping to hitch a lift to London, as he needed a job. The trousers had been in his suitcase, but he decided not to take them as they were ripped, and may have been bloodstained from a fight he had with a neighbour. Sullivan went on to claim he did not want what he allegedly called old tramps to have them, so he opted to throw them into the docks, the bottom of which is formed of sinking sand. This admission prompted the interviewing officer to state, "If the trousers had been stained with Diane's blood, we could have proved it. You threw them away, so we could not find them." This was an accusation Sullivan rejected. When Mr. Kay began cross-examining the two interviewing officers, the defence counsel stated that his client had now withdrawn that confession, amidst claims that he had been bullied, swore at, and called offensive names. Sullivan alleged that at one point he had gone to stand up, but an officer had forcefully pushed him back into his chair, while also going on to claim that his request for a solicitor was denied, and food was withheld. Having detailed these claims, Mr. Kay would also refer to why the full confession was not on tape, when other interviews were, with him asking D.I. Kiffin, was it just an unfortunate coincidence that the interview in which he made a confession was the very interview which was not recorded? The officer replied, it was a coincidence. Following the officers to the stand was a witness who had come forwards when the 9-month-long trial was in its first week. The evidence of Stephen France was deemed crucial, as he claimed that while on remand alongside the defendant in Risley, Sullivan had admitted committing the murder, and had allegedly stated that he had enjoyed it. Mr. France admitted to the court that he was a drug user with convictions for theft, but he denied any implications that his intention to testify against Sullivan were driven by revenge, nor had he any desire to be seen as a hero. Having clarified this, Mr. France went on to disclose that he had been awaiting trial for burglary, which was why he was in Risley alongside the defendant from October to December 1986, with him stating that Sullivan was being held in the cell located across the 8-foot wide corridor from his. Mr. France claimed that one morning Sullivan disclosed to him from across the hallway that he was being held for murder after killing a florist. The witness stated to the court, "I asked him how she was murdered, and he replied, with a crowbar. I then asked what evidence they had against him, and he said they had teeth marks, and that a neighbour had handed in the crowbar." Mr. France also stated that his fellow inmate had alleged that, quote, "the police had pinned him down to take teeth impressions, had battered him and given him a black eye." The former inmate added, "Sullivan said he made a statement and had admitted hitting the girl with a brick." The witness went on to recall that the defendant made another alarming confession one night when he falsely claimed to Sullivan that he had been accused of rape. This, the witness alleged, prompted his companion to open up about his own crime. During this exchange, Sullivan requested that Mr. France shout out the window towards another wing in the centre that, quote, "Peter Sullivan is in here, the one who murdered the Birkenhead girl, and he really enjoyed it." This the witness claimed he did, but received no reply from any other inmate. The former prisoner then told the court that on another occasion, The pair had been cleaning out their cells when Mr. France encouraged Sullivan to open up about what he had done, leading to the witness being given a more detailed description of the murder. Mr. France alleged he admitted to it, said he had seen the girl and had grabbed hold of her. He said he turned her around and thought she recognized him. Then he said he hit her over the head with the crowbar. These damning claims against his client were challenged by defense counsel Mr. John Kay during cross-examination, issuing his assertion that Mr. France was not being truthful, stating, "The simple truth is you never spoke to Sullivan at all about these matters. You have come here to tell a complete pack of lies to get a beastie convicted." Mr. France denied this was the case, as his time on the stand came to an end. More details regarding Sullivan's actions following his arrest were provided by Detective Superintendent Bill Cody, who accompanied Sullivan while he attempted to make a phone call. This occurred after he had withdrawn his confession, yet the officer recalled that the detainee struggled to bring himself to speak to his mother, to the extent that DS Cody recommended that perhaps a letter would be easier. This incident was mentioned during one of Sullivan's interviews later that day, with one of the officers asking Sullivan, "What could have made you say, 'How can I tell my mother I've killed a girl?'" Sullivan responded that he had confessed and made such statements while under pressure, to a point he felt he had to own up to it, even though he hadn't been involved. This was followed by him stating, "Why would I go out and kill a girl like that, only 21 years of age? She's got a lot to live for. I've got no reason to go out and kill anybody." On the 15th of October 1987, the trial was introduced to a new witness, Superintendent Derek Wright, who would present before the court a physical reconstruction of how Sullivan demonstrated the murder of Diane while in the police station, prior to retracting his confession. Accompanied by a colleague, Superintendent Wright showed the court how Sullivan had been standing when he grabbed hold of the wrist of CID Inspector David Byron Wright in the interview room, before going on to narrate what occurred next, stating, "Sullivan stooped down as he had hold of Mr. Byron and picked up the brick in his left hand. He said Diane was crying at the time, and he smacked her on top of the head with the brick, with a full arc swing of his left arm." Continuing to describe the scene he witnessed in the interview room, Superintendent Wright also reenacted for the court the moment when his colleague lay on the floor as a stand-in for Diane, with Sullivan demonstrating how he had struck her. The officer advised the court that after Sullivan repeated the striking action, quote, "He had then checked her pulse and put his head on her chest to look for a heartbeat." However, under cross-examination, the sergeant would admit that Sullivan was reluctant to lay his head on the officer's chest in the interview room while recreating the events of August the 1st. Mr. Wright went on to reenact with his colleague how Sullivan had shown them that he had grabbed hold of Diane's ankles and dragged her body to where it was found. Concluding this very compelling display to the court, Superintendent Wright also pointed out that throughout the interview, Sullivan denied committing the murder. The officer would be on the stand for 3 days, with the third day consisting of questions regarding Sullivan's mental state after being interviewed by the police for over a week. It was noted that 2 detectives had told Sullivan he was in, quote, "a right mess," to whom he replied, "I need to see a doctor or a psycho. I need to find out what is wrong with my mind, and because I think I'm daft, I keep going on with all these lies, but I never killed Diane. If I had killed her, I would have come straight forward and handed myself in." The court also heard that on the 1st of October 1986, While in his cell at Risley, Sullivan wrote a 13-page statement to the police. In it, he said, "I want to help you out over this murder and clear myself. Please let me see someone, like a doctor or a psycho. I don't mean any harm to anyone. My father has told me to help you with all your questions, so please help me from doing any harm to myself." The police questioning continued, as he was told that, having provided roughly 25 different statements, Sullivan would argue it was actually 15, the police told him they simply wanted the truth of what occurred on August the 1st, 1986. In an attempt to garner this truth, Sullivan was asked on the 3rd of October, "Can we ignore everything you said in the past and start from scratch? We do not want you to make things up. This really could be your last chance to put the record straight, and that is not said as a threat." This elicited a new statement from Sullivan, who conceded he had been drinking at the Park Hotel and the Crown pub that night, but alleged that at roughly 11:45 he went to his home in Queensberry Gardens, which is in the opposite direction to where the murder took place. Sullivan went on to claim that once home, he and his wife had gone to a nearby fish and chip shop. He also denied being on Bidston Hill on Sunday the 3rd of August, which was when the police believed Diane's clothing was burned. Sullivan alleged he had actually spent the afternoon with his mother, then returned home where he watched television all night. Superintendent Derek Wright told the court that during a subsequent interview on the 3rd of October, Sullivan was confronted with the discovery of his teeth impressions matching bite marks on Diane's skin, recalling from transcripts that the interviewing officer said, "Listen very, very carefully. Do you recall that on one day when you were here you had teeth impressions taken from you? If you were not on Borough Road and have never met Diane Sindall, how are your teeth marks all over her body? Your teeth are particularly distinctive, and that impression has gone off to an expert witness with many years' experience. He has examined photographs of bite marks on Diane's body and says those teeth marks are yours. We suggest that the 3 admissions you made are the truth." Sullivan continued to deny his involvement, responding to the assertion by stating, "No way are my teeth marks on her body. No way. I don't believe that man at all. I do not go around biting people. My teeth marks are not on her body. My teeth had never been near a girl named Diane Sindall. You are talking to Peter here. I don't go around killing people." Despite his protestations of innocence, he was informed that he would be charged with Diane's murder, and was sent to Risley to await trial. It was also reported to the court that while on remand, the defendant was assaulted as he stood in the reception area at the facility, with Sullivan claiming that another inmate struck him in the mouth. Following this incident, the defendant insisted on pressing charges and placed himself under solitary confinement. Under cross-examination by John Kay, Sergeant Wright was asked to cite one detail of Sullivan's statements which contained information only the perpetrator would know, pointing out that the officer had alleged that Sullivan had provided a remarkably accurate account. The defence counsel contested that no such details were provided, as Mr. Kay put to the officer. There was no foundation for the comment that the detail was accurate. There would have been a lot of interviews, and I am not suggesting there was any impropriety or even negligence, but can you point to any particular detail he gave you which only the murderer could have known? I am referring to his descriptions of events in Borough Road, and I am going to suggest to the jury that there is not one. Further into his cross-examination, Mr. Wright was asked about the false confessions, and the officer conceded that individuals had been known to wrongly admit to committing a crime despite being innocent. 3 weeks into the trial, the jury, who had now heard the prosecution's case, were taken to the scene of the crime, a trip deemed crucial by Judge Temple, who explained to the court it was vital to help them place when and where the crime occurred, and how it relates to the evidence they had heard. The 9 men and 3 women, accompanied by court officials, were escorted to the narrow alleyway where the attack took place and the body was found. For the first time, they were able to visualize its proximity to the road. It also its secluded nature, with a high wall to the right, the gable end of the old DIY store to the left, and the end of the alley blocked off by the gated access to the storeroom of the abandoned shop. It meant the entrance to the alley was the only potential escape route. The sloping, cobbled ground was uneven, as weeds had taken over, concealing rubble and litter that lay scattered around. It wasn't hard to imagine that at night it would have felt dark and isolated, despite being so close to the pavement and road beyond. The jury were then taken 400 yards along Borough Road, to the point where Diane's van had been abandoned, allowing the 12 jurors to retrace the route the 21-year-old had taken that night. This was followed by a short trip to the crime pub on Conway Street, where Sullivan had been drinking and participating in a darts match prior to the murder, once again allowing the jury to understand the distances between the various locations. Following this, they were taken just over 2 miles away, to Bidston Hill, and the location where Diane's charred clothing and handbag was found. Upon conclusion of the poignant excursion, the jury returned to Liverpool Crown Court, where the defence would present their side. Join me next time as I discuss the defence's case.
So in the meantime, keep an eye on those shadows.